Hey everybody. So I'm going to do another GoFollowLead presentation this week because I got a lot of positive feedback from last week. So I hope that you enjoy this one as well. This is one of my favorite workshops to do. It's all about being a great teammate. And it is something that I created from my experiences and my knowledge and presented at the Women's Basketball Final Four 2 or 3 years ago. So I hope you enjoy it and get a little bit out of it. There'll be opportunities for you to pause and make some notes, do the actual activities, think about a few things, but here we go. Maybe. Okay, so get the team together, and this actually I pulled this directly from a workshop that I did with George Washington women's soccer. And so kind of like an icebreaker just to get everybody talking, get in the right frame of mind. I asked, who are you as a teammate? And so they would get to go on their phones and choose the emoji that best represents them as the teammate that they currently are. And so they share those on the screen. I have an app, polleverywhere.com website that lets them share. And then I partner them up with maybe some that are the same, some that seem to be different. And then they have a conversation about the emoji that they chose and how that represents them as a teammate currently, how they see themselves as a teammate, how they evaluate themselves as a teammate. So that's kind of just a simple icebreaker. And then I have this slide here, and I just basically continue just to get them in the zone of talking is like, well, what do you see here? You know, we see a variety of teams, whether that's a cast on a television show, a band that's been together for a very long time, decades, a power couple in hip hop music and just pop culture and general entertainment. The Warriors, who, you know, until recently were a pretty dominant team, flying V. You got some ants, you have the military who are all working together to get their guy at the top of the wall, and the U.S. women's national soccer team, of course. And then our volleyball players, and I know Misty May, and then I cannot think of the tall player's name right now. I apologize, but they've been dominant in the world of beach volleyball in the Olympics. And so I think it's Carrie something. So what do you see here? Like, we kind of talk through that, and I kind of, to set up the chat, I leave them with this flag that's hanging in the Boston Celtics practice facility. It's what they see every day when they're competing and learning. And it's good teams have good players, and great teams have great teammates. And what is that saying? It's saying basically that talent really isn't enough. It's about how we come together. It's about how we treat each other. It's about how we pick each other up. It's about how we support each other, right? It's the great teammates that really make the great teams, not the talent. So close your eyes and let's dream a minute. I want you to think about who has been the best teammate in your life. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's someone that you sang with in the choir, or maybe in the band, or maybe you were in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or maybe it's just your best friend. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's someone you played Little League with, or high school with, or college, you know, so maybe it's someone you work with right now. But think about that person, and I want you to think about what separates them. Like, why is that person your best teammate ever in your life? And then once you kind of have an idea of that, the exercise that we're going to do here is, I want you to then, from what you just kind of came up with about that person, if you only had one question to ask someone to determine whether or not they should be on your team, right? The quality of teammate that they are. If you only had one question to ask in an interview, what would that question be? So hit pause, take a minute, and think about what that question is. I've heard everything from, you know, can I trust you? Which is pretty basic in my opinion. I try to encourage people to steer away from yeses and no questions, and rather focus on questions that ask people to give examples and tell stories. All right. And so you want people to explain, you want to hear about what they've lived through. You want to hear what they have learned, what they've observed. So trying to generate questions that kind of dig a little deeper beyond yeses and nos. So we would do a speed dating exercise with that, where you just kind of go around the room and try to get to as many people as you could get. Maybe you, sometimes I put a timer on for a minute and I yell rotate about 5 times. So one question to determine the teammate. So coming out of that, we basically talk about, well, what does this say about what you value in a teammate? If this is your question, right? Because your question should be a really strong indicator of what you're looking for in a teammate. So that's telling us what you value as well. So some of the questions, some of the answers, kind of break it down that way. So this is kind of a teammate scale that I put together. And so there are basically two major questions when it comes to being a teammate. What do you do when your coach or your boss asks you to do something that you don't really want to do, or that really tests your common sense? That's question one, okay? And that's kind of talking about our level of engagement. And then value orientation is from where do you draw your personal worth? And I'm going to explain these two things. So the first question is really about your level of engagement. Are you fully engaged? Are you 1 foot in, 1 foot out? Are you completely withdrawn and have isolated yourself? That's kind of how the spectrum runs. And then from your personal worth, and let me explain this because this one's kind of tricky. I'm not talking about selfish or selflessness here. What I'm talking about is, do you draw your value from within? Are you self-oriented? Or do you draw your value from without? Are you others-oriented? Are you seeking praise and external recognition, right? Or do you just know you're good and have that belief in yourself? So those are kind of the two questions, the two spectrums that are going to give us our 4 different types of teammates. So our first type of teammate, and this is over in the self-oriented disengaged. So someone who really has a strong sense of self, very confident, believes in their abilities and what they bring to the team, but has removed themselves, is disengaged, is the person that's kind of questioning every time the coach says something or the boss says something, does a little bit of a dance. And so foes are takers. They're energy vampires. They have low self-awareness. And what I mean by that is their perception of themselves does not really match, is not in line with the reality of themselves. They are someone who spreads thought. And by that, I mean that they're the first person in the locker room that's doing this, right? They're just thought spreaders. It's just ideas. It's just speculation. It's just rumors, gossip, whatever you want to call it. But they're that person that's in the locker room doing this. And I believe that the foe is someone that's very easy to think of. Like, we could probably all quickly think of someone. They're like, yep, that person. Some people call them cancers on teams, right? But that person that kind of just wants to do their own thing, isn't on board with what the team's doing, and is trying to drag everybody with them. An example of a foe, which, obviously I think Judas Iscariot is the epitome of a foe, but Benedict Arnold would be a foe. Felt pretty good about himself, wasn't on board with what was happening. Some people call him a traitor, right? So you'd be amazed at how many people don't know who Benedict Arnold is. I shouldn't say people, I should say student athletes in between the 18 to 23-year-old range. But if you have another suggestion for a foe, let me know. I'm for it. Okay, could probably come up with some super villain. Maybe Voldemort would be a good one. But he's pretty engaged, but he's doing his own thing. Anyway, okay, next one. So we're still staying over here on this disengaged side of the spectrum. We're going to slide down to this others-oriented, and these are fans. And what do I mean by fans? These are folks that are partially invested. Okay. Their investment really hinges on the success of the team or the company or the progress, right? They're always looking for kind of the quick fix so we can get back to the success and the fun. Very easily disgruntled, and they move on very quickly to the next thing. So they're just kind of going boom all over the place, boom, boom, boom. And they're the first person in the locker room that when the foe starts doing this, kind of hitches their wagon to that person. So they're the first kind of follower of that foe. And so fans, an example, a couple years ago, Chicago Loyola made a great run in the men's basketball March Madness tournament. And so Loyola had the entire city of Chicago was yeah, everybody's buying shirts, right? And all over the news. And so do you know how many people they averaged home attendance that year before the NCAA tournament run? 2,400 people. So this is what I'm talking about, fans. They're just getting on the bandwagon of whatever's good and hot that moment. Sliding over, still externally oriented, others oriented, or we're getting more though to the engaged side of things where they're on board with what's happening. And so a friend, so what do I mean by friend? And again, these are the 4 types of teammates, right? And so keeping in mind, like we're describing teammate behaviors, maybe some teammate values here, which we're going to get to at the end of this. Very socially minded. They're seeking approval, so they need you to tell them that they're pretty and you like their outfit. They're pleasers, but they're never pleased with themselves, which is a very big component of being a friend. They're comparers and always like seeing what everybody else is doing, what's going on there, why do they get that, why did they get that, and they're clique instigators. So when the team starts kind of breaking off, you know, they're trying to get people to be together because they need to be surrounded by people, right? Because they get their value externally. So Friends, the example here, Mean Girls, the movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's also a Broadway show now. Last but not least, just to keep this ball rolling, a follower. I love talking about followership. For those of you that have been in the leadership class, you know that. If you haven't, you'll know it soon. But a follower is someone that is vulnerably trusts, is endlessly willing, it tries different things, different ways, is a giver, puts others first. They can put others first, though, because they are self-oriented, right? Because they do get their value from within, so it's easy for them to put others first because they know they're good. They want to make everyone around them better. They're seeking personal growth, and they spread action. They're the ones, instead in the locker room running their mouths, they're like, yeah, you know, the plays are hard, so hey, guys, let's get together 10 minutes before practice and go through the plays, right? Spreading action instead of just words. So a couple years ago, the national championship football game, we all witnessed the Tua Jalen Hurts. I know this is a couple years removed, but it's still a really good example of what I think we're talking about. It's quality teammates. I know Jalen transferred, but he didn't do it right away. He stuck it out. And I thought that in that game, that's a really good moment of a really great example of what great teammates look like. So moving on. So that kind of gives you an idea of different types of teammates. And I honestly think that we're not just one thing all the time. I think that when we hit adversity, when our buckets get empty, when we're tired, right, that we tend to slide. And so we're going to talk about that here next. So which type of teammate are you? So you have foe, friend, fan, follower. You can rewind and go back in the presentation, look at that slide again. But where are you on your really good day, right? An ideal day, everything's going your way. Which quadrant do you find yourself in? And then when it's not going your way, when something happens and you're not yourself, you're not your best self, well, how do you slide? Are you someone that shifts from follower over to foe because you disengage, you start complaining, you start the negative talk, right? Or do you withdraw and just not talk to anyone at all? So are you sliding on that engagement scale? Or are you sliding down and start doubting yourself and losing belief in yourself, and you start calling your mama so she can tell you how good that you are? So kind of how do you see yourself on an ideal day, and how do you see yourself when it's not, you're not putting forth your best self? So take a few minutes, think about that. So when you have an idea of this, I think it's really important to have self-evaluation, and I also think it's really important to get 360 feedback. And so a lot of times what we'll do in these sessions is we then get around in a circle, and each player has to go around and they have to ask a question to their teammates. Hey, what's it like to be on the other side of me? What's it like to be my teammate? What's it like for me to be your teammate? What's it like to be in the locker room with me, to practice with me, to compete with me, to be at the dining hall together, to travel with me, to room with me? What type of teammate am I? What's it like to be on the other side of me? Because I know what I think as I'm going through life, but I'd really like to hear what you get to think. And so then every player gets to go around. This takes a while. But every player goes around and they get to hear the feedback from their team. And hopefully by this point, you know, you've kind of primed them a little bit to have open dialogue. So I would encourage you, pick 3 people, pick 5 people that you are walking through life with, and ask them that question. Get some feedback on how you're doing life with those around you, right? And then the last thing, which I kind of had to tweak this a little bit because it's, I like to talk about the values that a great teammate, that makes a great teammate, and those change in every program, and the behaviors, attaching tangible behaviors to those things. But I think what I'd like for you to do instead is get out a piece of paper, or you can get a poster board, draw you a person, draw whatever. Maybe it's a tree. I don't know. Be creative. It's your teammate, right? But what makes a great teammate? And then assign those things to that person. Like, what kind of heart do they have? What things do they value? How are they using their gifts? What do their behaviors look like consistently? How effective are they? And then what's their mentality? A lot of people say attitude, but what's their mentality on life? How are they approaching life? And so scouting, like drawing that out, I think it's great to put teams into smaller groups and then compare the drawings, and then from there you can kind of come up with a consensus of what that team is really saying and looking for in a teammate, and then you can hold each other accountable to those things that you're telling each other you need. So that's kind of a quick talk on being a great teammate. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this is beneficial. I do think that you have a guest lecture with Don Sandell, who's an expert in positive psychology. You also have a chapter on exercise, and the importance of exercise psychology. And so definitely pour into that. Go for a walk, do some meditation, do the readings, change your mindset. There's a lot coming out right now in team development and leadership development from a positive psychology perspective. So hope you enjoyed this. Go Tigers.